Welcome back to Harbour Unboxed. What are we doing for this video?
It's questions and what's that other thing that we have to do?
Comments and answers.
Yeah.
Answers and comments.
But you need questions for answers.
Sure. Oh, part 3 Q&A Patreon edition.
Sounds right.
Yeah, that's it. What was it again? Okay, first question. Have you ever thought of turning a suitcase into a mini ITX desktop for overseas trips? Reasons like Computex. Overseas trips carrying a hacked up suitcase full of electrical boards and wires. Have you thought about that?
Okay, with the upcoming Zen 2 Threadripper 3000 series, would you think it would be a significant improvement versus the 1950X to justify an upgrade at this stage, dollars per core improvement, based on the improvements seen with Ryzen 3000 and Epic releases, or would one wait till Zen 3? Main use is Adobe Suite, so Photoshop, Lightroom, Premiere, Media Encoder.
At a guess, I would say yes, and that is just a guess, based on just what we've seen from the AM4 Zen 2 parts. Yeah. But I expect the upcoming Threadripper parts to rip apart the 1950X. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I think not just the fact that you're not going to be able to get a 16-core Threadripper part, because at least I'm assuming...
At this point in time...
They've said starting at 24-core, so I'm going to assume that there's no 16-core.
It's AMD.
Yeah, so even a 24-core is going to... just by having the extra cores for things like Premiere, which doesn't scale super well with more cores, I believe, still at this point. Not the best for that.
No.
But even still, the improvement to clock speed, well, not necessarily clock speeds, but certainly IPC is going to give you a big boost. And I'm certainly very excited to upgrade my 2950X to a...
me too. Well, just to elaborate on that slightly, we're expecting the 3950X to destroy the 1950X purely because the 3900X handed the 2920X? Is that?
Yeah.
Yep. But pure speculation at this point. Just wait for our review. It's coming up next month.
The only thing I'd be concerned about is the price. I would imagine that you could have bought a 1950X for quite a good price. Certainly.
Now.
Well, I don't know when this person's bought it, but
sure.
Even... not that far after the launch, they're available for pretty decent sort of prices. Whereas it's looking like Threadripper is probably going to come in. I mean, the 3950X is $750, so you're going to have to be spending a fair bit on Threadripper, you'd think. So
at the end of the day, we haven't tested it, so we can only guess. So reviews next month. Okay, have you guys ever dealt with a SOOS Aura before? They recently updated their software to Armory Crate, and after the update, all my RGB devices just stopped working and can't be recognized by the software. That's extremely annoying. Do you guys have any suggestion on how to solve these kinds of problems? Nothing we can really do about it, unfortunately. Thanks, keep up the good work. Love you guys. Oh, it's very nice, thank you. Unfortunately, there's not much you can do about it, really, if they've broken support of their own product. That sucks. We don't really play around with RGB stuff. Do you and yours? I
just have my RGB lights on default.
I usually just turn them off. Because, generally we don't test that kind of stuff. As I've said before, I think the last 2 Q&As now, we don't do motherboard reviews. So we don't do in-depth, top to bottom reviews where we check all that kind of stuff out. I know there'll be other YouTube channels that test RGB lighting effects and the software. But not stuff we do. We normally focus on VRM thermals and stuff like that. So unfortunately, we're not too helpful on that one. And unfortunately, there's not much you can do about it apart from complain to ASUS and hope they fix it soon.
Yep. All right, 2-parter question. Let's get the first part done. Have you ever entertained a thought of SOC as a future of gaming? So SOC being a system on chip, it's kind of your package where you've got everything there, your CPU, GPU, everything.
Kind of like an APU.
Kind of like an APU with more stuff. I mean, it makes sense, but certainly I don't think the performance you get out of the GPU especially is going to be there for quite some time. I mean, if you see the die size of a GPU, it's like pretty big, and to fit a CPU and other stuff in there is going to be challenging. I think multi-die is definitely, we're going to see some packages that have very powerful GPUs and CPUs on them, but for when...
Could certainly be something that happens in the future, but it's not happening anytime soon, at least in my opinion.
This second part's for you. Will there be a second season of Upgrade My PC, Please?
Not anytime soon. Kind of like SOCs.
Yeah, that one's on the back burner, I'd say.
Yeah, it's on the back burner. It was an experiment. wasn't necessarily a failure or anything like that. I just not super motivated to do it again, and the market's got to kind of be right to do it. We ran into a few headaches here and there with it, but yeah, basically Season 2 is definitely on the back burner and no plans at this point in time, unfortunately. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
Are there any plans for new Hardware Unboxed merch? Perhaps something barbecue themed? Maybe even some official barbecue sauce? That's the first time I've heard anyone request barbecue sauce.
What if you make thermal paste flavored barbecue sauce?
I'd love to see that. There's lots and lots of plans for things. We have lots of ideas for stuff we want to do. I would be personally interested if we were going to do culinary type things. I'd be interested in doing beer and hot sauce. That would be really interesting. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. But as for other more realistic things, there's lots of things that we're planning on producing. So yeah, stay tuned for the Hardware Unboxed store and get your hoodies if you haven't got one already.
That's the Steve designed hoodie.
Yeah.
Full credit right here to this guy.
Yeah, always humble as usual. Okay, Steve, when you receive a video card as a sample to do a review on it, in this case the Radeon 5700, is it allowed to do more than regular tweaking, e.g. flashing a 5700 XT BIOS or using the power play table to achieve, higher performance?
Well, we don't let the companies dictate anything. If they want to send us the card, they have to send us the card and we do what we do with it. Yep. If they basically said, you can't do this, or this, we'd probably say, well, don't bother sending it. We just look at a different card or we'll buy it and do whatever the hell we want with it. So that's not a consideration, but no one's ever said anything like that. I mean, we might get a card sent under NDA and they're like, for the unboxing video, you can't show the PCB or something like that. But
yep,
nothing really like that at all. So are you going to retest Ryzen with better timing RAM and ABA update? Each adding about 3.5% performance. Well, the manually tuned memory offers significantly more than 3 to 5% performance. Would that close the deficit to Intel basically in gaming? So this is something I've been promising for a while. The reason I haven't done it yet is because, well, A, I've been busy, and B, I'm now waiting for the new AGIS revision to be released, which I think will probably happen around the same time as the 3950X, and that's the 1.0.0.4 update.
Yep.
But yeah, I would like to test at least, if it's not the 3950X, the 3900X against the 1900K with tuned memory, because we've now shown in many other media outlets that the performance uplift for Ryzen is huge, and so we're interested to see if doing different but still manually tuned timings for Intel results in big performance uplifts, which we kind of know it doesn't, but it still does improve performance.
Yep. Next question. Recently I asked a question about automating game tests, and the answer was that it was not feasible and manual testing is more reliable. So my question is to both of you, how mad are your gaming skills from all these tests? And if you would pick one or two of these games as your absolute best skill-wise, what would those games be? Do the benchmarks make us better at games? I wouldn't have thought so.
I think it would probably only serve to make us worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like wrecks my aim because I'm just like shooting in, like missing the enemies deliberately.
I have a lot of that. Just shooting in blank spaces and stuff.
Yeah. So definitely doesn't help with skills. Basically the way you get good at games is just playing them for hours on end, which is what I used to do when I was younger. But let's skip that part and just say if we had to pick a game to showcase our elite gaming skills. For me, it would probably have to be like an RTS style game, probably like StarCraft 2, which is probably the one that most recently I've put the most time into. But these days I mostly play Fortnite with my daughter, as I've said previously, and I'm like okay at Fortnite. I'm getting better quite rapidly, but I think for me to get really good at it, I'd have to go back to the old days where I just do like 10-hour stints regularly and stuff like that, which I don't, obviously not doable anymore. But just play for a bit of fun. It is a lot of fun with my daughter, so that's good. What about you?
Oh, skill-wise, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm like a bad gamer, but I'm not like a top-tier elite gamer. And I spent, as I mentioned before, most of my gaming is single-player games, which is really is kind of, doesn't matter how good you are as long as you can play through. I used to play most games at pretty high difficulty levels for single-player, but I've sort of cut back a bit on that because I used to enjoy, getting beaten and then finding ways to get better. but I sort of just these days don't have time for that stuff anymore. I'd say my best game for skill-wise is probably the Battlefield series. When I get online in that, I tend to do pretty well. Certainly wouldn't be like esports level good, if there's even esports for Battlefield, but so not like world-class good, but certainly better than most noobs that you get matched with in those games. And I'm pretty all right at racing games as well on a controller. So, yeah, me and my girlfriend play a lot of racing games together because she's just incredible at racing games just somehow.
For someone who doesn't drive.
For someone that doesn't have a license and doesn't play a ton of games, she enjoys gaming like I do, but certainly doesn't play as much as I do. She just destroys me, so...
That's funny.
Yeah.
On your personal rig, or editing rig, they're kind of one and the same these days, what do you do to ensure it stays operating smoothly and reliably, such as anti-malware programs, CC Cleaner, etc.? I don't do anything. I was actually
use any of those.
Okay, I was interested to see what you do.
I think CC Cleaner, aren't those things can sometimes even make your PC run like worse because it goes in and cleans up stuff it shouldn't? I've heard a few of those.
Mixed results on there. I think they can be useful tools if used correctly, and I'm not sure. But basically, I don't do anything, really. I just...
Send viruses my way because I just use Windows Defender. No, it's all... With that stuff, it's all about just being smart on
I don't
what you're doing on your PC.
Like, I'm actually pretty cautious. Like, if there's an application that I think I need, I'm like...
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll even install that on a test system first. So I don't really install a whole lot of applications and stuff like that. I just...
Yeah, don't go on LimeWire anymore. I'm not downloading, familyguy.mp4.exe or anything. So that's passed.
Yeah.
So
don't click shady links or open... Hey, you've got this fine. Click this executable to open the PDF. Yep. So, nothing like that.
What do you guys think of the contention that cost per frame should take into account the cost of the rest of the system? E.g., if a 30% increase in GPU cost gave you only 20% higher FPS, but in terms of the PC as a whole, it costs only 15% more. It's come up a fair bit.
It comes up a little bit. How do we tackle this one? So, basically, I mean, if it was really a serious point of contention, I guess you would do 2 graphs, but even then it's like, what is the budget for the second graph? So do we then have to make some assumptions where if it's a $200 GPU, we assume $1,000 system budget, and then if it's a $500 GPU, do we estimate between $1,500 and $1,700 and so on and so forth? So and you just end up with all these confusing graphs. And basically, at the end of the day, you're assuming that people who are buying new GPUs are buying an entire new computer with that GPU. Whereas usually people are upgrading their GPUs because CPUs aren't as critical for gaming. And especially if you a couple of years ago bought yourself a Ryzen 7 1700, really, and you overclock, I think, to 4 gigahertz if it'll do it, 3.8, 4 gigahertz, you're going to be good on the CPU front for so many years. That thing will see like multiple GPU upgrades. So I think it's fair to say the vast majority of people do execute GPU upgrades more regularly than entire system overhauls. And then, I was just going to say, it's really on you guys. Like, we're giving you the information, like how much difference it is. So although we focus on cost per frame because it makes sense for the reasons I just told you, like, you're not battle droids that are just like, this is what I was told. Like, you can take that information and then go, well, I'm actually buying a new system, and you're weighing up the cons and pros of going the next step up on every component, and then you can apply those figures to your build and work it out.
I mean, my opinion on this is kind of that it doesn't matter whether you do it as just GPU upgrades or systems as a whole, because the point of cost per frame to me is not about comparing tiers of products. It's about comparing the two competing products.
Yeah, that's true.
So, of course, a 2080 Ti is always going to have the worst cost per frame because it's a very expensive premium product. No one is not buying a 2080 Ti simply because it has the worst value. They're buying it because it's really high performance. So, to me, it's more about you've got your products in your $350 to $450 range where you've got 2060, 2060 Super, 5700, 5700 XT. They're all about the same price, and that's where cost per frame, I think, really shows the best value products in that range. And whatever products are the best value in that range are also going to give you the best value when you factor it in as a whole, because the price for those products isn't too different. So especially with two products that are the same price and you just look at the cost per frame, it doesn't matter whether you look at just the GPU upgrade or system as a whole.
Yeah, I mean,
and the best value product is going to be the best value overall.
Well, as an example, let's say we're talking about the 5700 XT, $350, $400 rather, against the 2070 Super, $500. So I don't remember the exact. I think the 2070 Super was like 9% faster on average. I don't remember the exact figures all up, but basically, the advantages of the 2070 Super will be whatever advantages NVIDIA cards have, like if it's ray tracing you want to take advantage of and stuff like that, which don't look as impressive when that price margin's bigger. But if you reduce it for the total system, it shrinks, and then those things may have more weighting on the conclusion. But I agree with what you've said.
To me, I get the comparison because some people might have the same sort of prices, but to me, they're almost a different class product because they're in the mid-range.
Well, yeah,
right?
I know.
Mid to upper mid-range, but a 5700 XT being $100 cheap is pretty significant.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think the argument there is more, look at how the 5700 XT provides nearly the performance of a 2070 Super for a much lower price. And sure, factor in the whole system, it looks a bit worse, but it's still, that's the impressive thing. It's not, I don't think there's too many people that, if they're even budgeting a whole system, are going to be able to afford like a $400 versus $500 product. It's a pretty big gap.
And it's like if it was a $2,000 system and then the Super makes it $2,100, it's still $100 US out of your pocket.
Yeah, and if the 5700 XT gets close and you're saving yourself $100, it's still...
Yeah.
I mean, I get in that situation that there's sort of advantages, I don't think that's where cost per frame necessarily is the most advantageous when you've got people looking at different price points.
I just think if you're building an entire system, you have a budget in mind and you work out the best hardware. Like it depends on the mentality here. Like if you have a budget and you get the best value product for every category, storage, your case, your CPU, you're going to end up with a really good, well-balanced, high value sort of system overall. Whereas if you sort of do that, the percentage is only small, so I'll spend that extra $100 here. I'll get this more expensive CPU. And if you apply that mentality to every single component, then all of a sudden the system's not $100 more. It's like $500, $600 more.
Yeah, and the reason why that, when you look at total system costs into factoring into your upgrades, and sort of that reason is, it's the rest of your system components are effectively almost like offsetting the price increase, because you've basically got this block of cash that you're already spending, so it kind of doesn't look as bad. Whereas the value difference, to me, it's still, the data's roughly the same. So, yeah. Anyway,
that's why we do things the way we do them. Okay, Steve. Well, considering we know Tim doesn't go fishing because he's the kind of nuff that headbutts his car, so you don't want to take him out on the water, he'll probably end up drowning. Will you be dragging him out of his house, which he's already probably scared by that, I thought, and slapping a fishing rod in one hand and a tackle box in the other? So will I be doing that? Yes.
Are you?
Yes, I'll definitely be doing that. I'll probably get some GoPros and film it because it'll be a hell experiment. But no,
when am I going to agree to that?
Who says you have to agree?
Okay,
they said
I'm a slave now, apparently.
The word was dragging, so I just have to grab you by the hood, and drag you kicking and screaming. But I think you'll really end up enjoying it.
The main reason I've done a bit of fishing before, and I think it's pretty boring. But apart from that, I don't eat fish, so to me, it's like, I'd much rather go hunting if it was up to me. But whatever, I'd be well up for going hunting stuff in a. Tim goes to
hunt a deer, and now it's like, now the hunter becomes the hunted.
That's probably what would happen, but that's mostly the reason why I'm not so into fishing. But yeah.
Okay, well, I still don't accept that answer.
Fair enough.
Moving on. At Tim. So is this one for you?
Yep.
I'll let you read this one out then, since it's a Tim one.
All right. So this is about my video. Does capping your frame rate really reduce input lag? Very informative response to battle nonsense results. Now we are aware that in-game capping of frame rate may reduce input lag. Would you consider adding a latency test in your game settings guides? Absolutely love those guides for new competitive multiplayer games, e.g. new Call of Duty or Battlefield. Had a lot of people ask for this, so definitely something that I'm exploring doing. I would have to optimize my setup a little bit to get that done because input lag testing very time consuming to do it really well. You need to do lots of runs, the setup, getting all the gear installed and everything takes a lot of time. So I'd love to do that for some competitive games, but at the same time, Battle Nonsense's entire channel is built off doing that testing. So he seems to do a pretty good job. So I'd just recommend that. I'm sure he's going to be covering the new Call of Duty, for example. So when he gets that sort of testing up and on his channel, I would just
and you guys
over there. Yeah, we did a bit more testing on the reducing the input lag thing to sort of figure out where the results lie and sort of that. I'm not sure whether either of us will end up doing more videos on that, but certainly Battle Nonsense found that in some games, I think like Far Cry 5, which is one of the examples I used, that definitely the in-game cap doesn't reduce input lag by a significant portion. And in some games that I test, like Fortnite, seems like I was running perhaps a bit closer to a CPU limit than was in Battle Nonsense's testing situations. So I think the overall conclusion from that video still kind of stands where it's not in every game that you will see a benefit. And I still think it's perhaps a bit... You certainly do need the testing behind you because it's too fiddly to make like a just general, a generalized conclusion because even if you're running it like still a decent GPU utilization, but you're not quite right up at the top end, then you might not see a benefit at all. So it's definitely something that needs a lot of testing, and I think Battle Nonsense is sort of hitting the mark with that sort of content.
Cool.
All right, Wargaming is putting some ray tracing stuff in their World of Tanks games. It's Intel-based ray tracing. Would you consider making a video about it, explaining the technology, doing some benchmarks? I think this would be a Tim thing, right? Yeah, it's probably something I'd make. It depends on the review schedule and the videos that we want to make because it would kind of be sort of a lower priority thing. It would be interesting to look at for sure, very interesting. But, by the time I get around to testing it, how relevant is that going to be anymore?
Yep.
But it's certainly something that I would like to look at. It just depends on what sort of content we want to make over the big release period that's going to come out in the next couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay, regarding XT BIOS on 5700, does a dual BIOS card enable you to run with both XT and non-XT BIOSes? So I'll just answer that question from that point forward because I don't think there's too much more about the actual question. Essentially, yes, that is exactly what you can do. The two BIOSes are independent, so you can flash one. You can flash them with whatever you like, either one. But yes, you could technically have an XT BIOS and then a non-XT BIOS on the same card, and you could do that for 5700s or 5700 XTs. Thinking of starting my own YouTube channel on my musings, so
cool.
Good luck with that. It's a lot of work, but it is fun. What are your current guidelines for sharing video quotes / pictures from content? 3 to 5 seconds, or what depends on, or what does it depend on? What are the criteria there, I suppose? What current capture cards do you recommend for two uses? One being BIOS captures, and the other being streaming / live stream. Okay, so for our particular content, our guidelines, we don't really have any guidelines. It's more, if you use our benchmarks or any of our B-roll or whatever, just give credit, I suppose. Don't rip huge amounts of it off in the video, but it can certainly be more than just 3 to 5 seconds.
I think that's just the thing. You don't want to see, take our benchmark graphs and then make your own version of the benchmark graphs with all the data in it and then not cite us. That would be the absolute worst. Just a link and, using the charts we've already made is fine because, that's got our logo in them and everything. So it gets people to know where the data's come from. And as you say, not using all of the charts because we have seen sometimes where someone will basically just republish everything that we've said and all the testing. It's like, maybe just stick to the important points that you want to make in your video.
Yeah.
But certainly, you can use it if you want to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you probably will be able to gauge what seems reasonable. So, But if you do use a whole heap, we probably wouldn't get you to take the video down, we just say, please don't do that again.
Yeah,
anyway,
pretty much.
We haven't run into that problem before, so that's fine. What current capture cards do you recommend? Well, I use the Elgato 4K 60 FPS capture card for my game captures, BIOS captures and stuff like that. I don't really do any streaming.
I don't think you need a separate card for BIOS captures or streaming. You don't need one for BIOS, one for streaming. You just get one that does both.
No, the one I use though is in a physical computer. So it's
yeah,
not
I've got one as well.
Yeah, okay.
But I definitely would recommend the PCIe ones, not the USB ones.
Okay.
They because of the PCIe interface versus USB, they can capture higher frame rates, higher resolutions, higher bit rates. So. Will you guys consider reviewing some of the less common X570 motherboards as a, hey, look at this thing you've never heard of kind of deal? Would it be cost effective from a business perspective? The specific motherboards I got in mind are the colourful CVN X570 Gaming Pro and the BioStar X570 Racing GT. There's around 300 to 400.
Yeah, look, it's kind of like, I think there was a question earlier about, 3D graphics cards and sort of cheaper, lesser known brands. This applies certainly for the motherboards. I don't recommend motherboards from either of those brands because a motherboard is such a complex bit of kit. The BIOSes in particular are significantly worse on these brands. So I have a BioStar AM4 motherboard right now, one of their new ones. And the board itself, the quality's okay. It's not great. It's certainly not on par with the other bigger 4 known brands. Your ASRock, ASUS, MSI, Gigabyte. So, yeah, it's probably not worth the small amount of money you potentially save. I'm not even sure these boards are cheaper than some of the cheaper boards from those companies. But the BioStar BIOS was pretty crap. So I wouldn't recommend it at this point in time. They need to mature much more before I'd bother with them. So, yeah. I'm not going to review the board because I just don't think it's very good. I'll do some VRM testing on it. But that's pretty much that.
All right, how do you guys feel about companies making long and confusing names for their products? NVIDIA with their 16 series, 20 series, Super, TI, etc. Intel with their, it says, it's pretty bad at the moment.
Yeah, it is.
AMD with their 5000 series GPUs. Do you think it's unnecessarily complicated and meant to confuse the consumers with so many products, or is it just a necessary part of this industry? I don't think they're deliberately trying to confuse people because
that wouldn't be the goal.
It wouldn't make much sense. I mean, you want people to know what they're buying, specifically what are the more expensive products so that people spend more money. I think with a lot of these things, especially Intel products, I think they think what is going to be advertised is Core i7. And anything beyond that is just for like enthusiasts or system integrators or OEMs. Because you see a lot of, especially laptops marketed as just having like Core i5, Core i7 CPUs inside. And you just accept that you get Core i5 level performance and Core i7 level performance. But I don't think that's a good enough excuse because I think really you do want to know the entire product name because that tells you exactly what you're getting, especially if there's multiple Core i7s.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they're doing it to avoid that. I wouldn't have thought. So I don't know. But like the NVIDIA one, I can speak to that. So I've chatted with a few different retailers and they're pretty convinced the 16 series hasn't sold very well because people don't know it's a new product. Like they think it's an old series and they think the 20 series is the new series. So yeah, a lot of confusion there. And I don't think that would have particularly helped NVIDIA, but maybe, they know more than me.
Yeah, so. I think it worked a lot better with AMD having it as being like Vega 5664 and RX 500 series so that you're not, the numbers aren't just lower. It's kind of like, it looks entirely different.
Yep.
So I think NVIDIA did probably stuff up a bit there, but I totally agree with like this, having Super and TI and non-Super or non-TI.
Yep.
Will we get Super TI models? I mean, they've already got GeForce. They've already got, RTX or GTX. They've already got a number, and then you're adding another thing at the end.
Yeah.
I just think that, you've got your, three names that you can have in there.
Oh, my rule.
Yeah, your
three-name rule.
The three-name rule.
Yeah.
I mean,
I established that with unboxing
makes perfect
boxes.
sense. I think Intel CPUs now have got 6 letters or numbers for just the code.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's like, change it from Core i7 or change that brand and then restart the numbers at something reasonable.
Well, that's the whole point of a name. It's quick and catchy. If you wanted product codes, you wouldn't have names. You just have product codes.
Yeah, it's like the new AMD series, Radeon RX 5000 series, seems not the best, but it's certainly, at least you know it's a new series. It's got a different structure for the name. It uses RX, which is what the 500 series had, but it's a different number. So it makes all sense. Intel 10,000, like what the hell? Like get that sorted, shorten that down, use a new series. Like I think especially with 10 nanometer, it would have been, not they're ready for that yet, but 10 nanometer would be a really good point for Intel to refresh all of that.
Yeah.
And give us, maybe they would have to stick with Core i7 or something because it's a very popular branding, but something different, something new that we can get on board with, because this current situation sucks. At least we're not talking about monitors, because it's even worse.
Tim really has a bone to pick here with the monitors. Normally I don't mind too much, but yeah.
Just go on seriously, if you want to see the worst naming scheme I've ever seen in my life, go on the Acer website, click onto the monitors and look at how many different monitor series they have. They have like 20 different product lines for essentially the same sort of product, and then all of them have the worst names. They've all got like just a alphabet soup at the end of them. They've got numbers, they've got letters going everywhere.
I've triggered him now.
Oh, Acer, get it together. Seriously. Impossible.
All right, let's quick move on before Tim has another relapse.
Explode.
Steve, do you ever dust off the hardware shelf behind you? If yes, how often, and how long does it take you to get the job done? I do it very rarely. Every now and then I actually have a vacuum with like a little dust nozzle, so it's really
nice.
easy to go around and quickly do that. But because this room, it's not used very often, I come in here and I film in front of the camera, but I don't do any of my testing, bit of B-roll and stuff, but this room isn't heavily used, so things like dust aren't stirred up and not too much stuff's trekked in here, but it's not too bad to keep on top of. Steve, what's the magic in the MSI 5700 XT Gaming X model that's making it so cool and quiet with only 2 fans? It's driving me nuts to see a 2-fan design comfortably sitting on top of all the fancy triple fan ones. I think it was like last Q&A people... was there a question last Q&A where they said, should I just naturally buy a triple fan card over a dual fan? And we said it has a lot to do with the heatsink underneath. I feel like that was one...
But definitely has something to do with the heatsink, doesn't it? It's
yes,
all about
well, the MSI 5700 XT Gaming X is by far the heaviest 5700 XT graphics card. So it's got a big heatsink on there, boatloads of surface area for fins, lots of heat pipes to extract that heat from the hot spot and spread it through all those fins so the 2 fans can push the air over it, which then dissipates the heat. So it really comes down to a really important part of it is the heatsink, and that's why when I reviewed the MSI Evoke, although it was better than the reference card and I had no other points of reference, I was like, yeah, it's better than the reference, but pretty underwhelmed by the 355 gram heatsink, whereas this thing had like 1,000 gram heatsink or something like that. So big heatsink, big efficient heatsink, and then you don't need to pump tons of air over it. Having said that, I think the fans on that card, I don't remember exactly, but I think they did spin a bit more aggressively than what you'll see on a Sapphire Nitro Plus or Power Color Red Devil.
Like if you got an Intel box cooler and you added like 10 more fans onto it, it's probably not going to make it that much better.
No.
But if you added a big chunk of more fins on that thing, it's going to improve.
That's very true.
Why is it that seemingly every tech site has forgotten what multitasking is? Every CPU review amounts to, let's run this program all by itself, then let's run that program all by itself, with no attempt at actually testing what multi-core processors are for, which is running multiple programs simultaneously without them slowing each other down terribly, as was the case with single-core processing. So I think this comes down to 2 points. The first point is that a lot of the time it's too difficult to test multitasking in a significant way because there's so many variables. And also, at least speaking from my experience using heavily multi-threaded CPUs like Threadripper, a lot of what I'm doing isn't necessarily like significant multi-threading. It's usually like having a task going that's very performance intensive and then doing a few lighter things on the side. It's very rare that I'm, doing it like video encoding and then also trying to do some other very intensive tasks like CAD work at the same time.
It's very, very, very misunderstood, multitasking. So first of all, everything you've said is 100% true. Second of all, most of the time when we're testing core-heavy CPUs and running that one application, whether it be Blender, or Corona, or Premiere, whatever it may be, they're using all the cores. So we're testing it's not like we're benching the 3900X in a program that only uses 4 cores and then going, oh, the 7700K is faster. That's not happening. We're definitely testing these CPUs in an application that uses all 12 cores, 24 threads. And yeah, as Tim says, multitasking with core-heavy applications gets messy because there's a whole Windows priority thing there. So the way I did this ages ago when we were trying to test the 2990WX, and I would get a subset of applications and run them, and I did it, I think it was back-to-back, there was like an average of 6 runs, and I had to add up all the scores together and average them, because sometimes it would prioritize Premiere, other times it would prioritize Corona. And so they were all finished. Sometimes, if Corona got a lot of cores, and that would finish much faster than the second run. So you had, and then if say I've got my editing rig and it's got 32 cores, and I'm rendering a video that's only using 10 of them, I can't then go and play a game, even if it's a game like Fortnite or a game that doesn't require a lot of system resources. No matter what that game is, there's a good chance it'll run like crap.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that. You can't just go, oh, I've got all these cores free, therefore the system will run. So,
because the system is still using things like memory and storage that potentially maxed out, even if you're not using all the cores.
There's a whole heap of potential
Windows
bottlenecks.
Schedule is doing a whole bunch of stuff and still has to allocate stuff here and there with that sort of thing.
So multitasking is kind of like having multiple things open, but not necessarily doing something with all of them. It's just not having to open and close the program. So like you've got Word open, you Alt-Tab to your browser to do some research, then you Alt-Tab to Photoshop to make an image or something. So you're doing all these multiple things at once, but they're not like encoding and using a whole heap of system resources. Once something's being used to its max and it's hogging a whole heap of system resources, you can't use whatever's left to play a game without periods of really bad lag and things like that. But anyway, the main reason I think people just don't do it is because it's really, really difficult to do accurately, and it will quite easily lead to misleading data. Okay, what is Intel's next logical move now that their 18-core flagship is getting matched or beaten by AMD's mainstream Ryzen parts? How do they remain competitive in an era where they have no silicon that can match Zen 2, much less Zen 3 and Zen 4? Do you think Intel 7nm will arrive on time and put them back into valid competition with Zen 5, which is due out around the same time as 7nm is in 2022? So Intel's 7nm there.
So I think we don't know for sure that the AMD's mainstream Ryzen part will beat the 18-core flagship because both of those parts haven't been released. I think it's probably going to be the case that the 3950X is going to beat it, but
in some instances, yes.
But we haven't seen that for sure. So how do they remain competitive? Well, I hate to break it to you, but the consumer desktop market actually isn't Intel's biggest market by far. They are much bigger in the server and mobile space. And those are their two markets where I actually think they will remain reasonably competitive. Maybe not as much in EPYC, but they certainly are getting out 10nm, what are they called? Server processors, Xeon chips.
Okay,
That's what I was thinking of.
Yep.
They're certainly going to get those out a lot well before the desktop chips are coming out by the sounds of it. So I think that, if 10nm can at least be somewhat competitive with much lower clock speeds, we know right now that they're probably not going to be hitting the clock speeds required for desktop usage. But certainly they're going to be, if they're reasonably efficient at say 2 gigahertz, then quite possibly, especially with some of the new architectures that they're coming up with, that it's quite possible that for those lower power workloads or lower clock speed but lots of core workloads, that they will have some products that are actually not that bad. And I think we've seen, even with 14nm right now on the mobile front, that they're crushing it.
Yeah.
So even with the Zen 2 product coming in there, it's not clear that Zen 2 will be better than a 14nm laptop chip because they're so far ahead. So yeah, I think definitely for the desktop part, they'll struggle. What are they going to do? More cores at high power? I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I think they may have to come to terms with losing that battle, really.
Yeah, I think it might be like the HDDT what we've seen since Threadripper for HDDT. They had a few years where they weren't really that competitive, but they didn't really care because it's not much of a market for them. And I expect that could be the situation until we get Intel 7nm. But again, I don't expect that will have much of an influence on their bottom line or anything.
No.
And I think
not short term.
The server market as well is too complicated to just say that even if AMD has faster parts, that the brand loyalty to Intel will give them a big leg up there as well. And I think that will happen in desktop as well. Even people like Intel. So yeah, it's a very complicated market. I think there'll be some interesting things to play out there.
Will we see streaming benchmarks? Thanks for all the great content. You really are making our lives easier. Oh, that's nice to hear. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I won't be making your streaming life any easier. Yeah, we've done polls before about the streaming benchmark thing. This actually, I think it mostly came up around first gen Ryzen when everyone was sort of...
Yes, talking about the 8-core being good for streaming.
And we did a couple of polls and it was like very small part of the audience was interested in regular streaming sort of stuff. So we thought it probably wasn't worth the investment in streaming benchmarks. I think Gamers Nexus did a bit. Don't know how that content worked out for them, but it's not something I'm personally that interested in at this point in time. That may change, but that's probably one of the bigger deciders of why I haven't done it.
I think we've mentioned a lot in the past that if you're sort of a casual streamer that, using NVIDIA's encoding engine is pretty solid these days. I mean, I'm not big into streaming, so I won't call myself an expert, but certainly I think a lot of people, you could either split into go down the GPU encoding route, which will be good for you in most situations, or if you're more a high-level pro type streamer, you really want to get into it, you should probably go more down the dedicated PC route.
I think that's the way of looking at it.
I think that split in the middle where you've got a high-power CPU and you're doing both your streaming and gaming on the CPU at the same time, I actually think it's kind of a small niche that most people shouldn't do.
It's kind of like 2 gamers, 1 PC.
Yeah,
You're just better off getting 2 PCs.
Yep.
Next one.
All right, long-term Discord member Ibslice, a fellow Aussie, has asked us a great question. Recently, there seems to be suppliers who refuse to send things due to the concern of a bad review. I don't understand this, as many of the companies seem to have got 10 great reviews to 1 bad one. What are your opinions on this? Is there a trend where companies were expecting free positive advertising? Are we going to start seeing a business model where no reviewers get anything unless it's a paid review? Very interesting.
Yeah, I don't think it's that widespread and that much of an issue. Yeah, I don't really think that at all. We are coming up against it here and there. So, like the ASUS example with the TUF, it may very well have been that they were trying to source that card and they may have eventually got it to me. They did give some fairly legitimate reasons as to why there was a delay on that part. And we did see after I purchased and gave their Z390 boards a really hard time, they then turned around and wanted to work closely with us and they provided a whole heap of boards. So, yeah, I mean, I kind of get the MSI situation with the Evoke, but at the same time, it's like, well, you've still got that product on shelves and you're still selling it. So that was with the mech that they didn't want to send us.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time with that sort of thing, it's like they're gonna try and work with us if we are doing a good job. Like if we came out and did a bad review but we'd done a horrible job of it, like we stuffed up all the testing and it's just flat out wrong, I think it's much more likely that we'd run into this situation of not being sent things because we would get a bad review. I think most companies, I'd say, fairly understand or are fairly reasonable when it comes to the stuff that we say if it's a negative type review. They just go, okay, we understand the points you've made. They might pull you up on a few things and question things and ask for clarifications. But generally speaking, most companies aren't just like blacklisting you for bad reviews like some people think is happening. At the same time, though, you ask, is there a trend where companies were expecting free positive advertising? There are definitely some companies that think that when they send out products for YouTube reviews, that it's more like, oh, I thought you were advertising this. I thought you were just talking about what it is. And I think it's sometimes maybe people who are more of a novice in the industry or just joined the marketing team or whatever are a bit shocked at some of the things that we test and how we test it.
Yeah.
They certainly go, oh, I didn't realize, like I've gotten plenty of times like, oh, I didn't realize your testing was so in depth. And it's like, okay, you could have watched one of our videos previously to see what you were getting into, but I think sometimes there is that sort of mentality of thinking that YouTube is about advertising.
Influencers.
Yeah, the influencer thing. So are we going to start seeing a business model where no reviewers get anything unless it's paid? I don't think so. I think unless those influencers are what you guys are interested in watching, in which case then, of course, that will be the big thing because you'd send it to whatever the popular people are doing.
Yeah.
But right now, it doesn't seem like people who do paid influencer content is really the big deal in this market at the moment. There's people that do it,
Yep.
but I don't think they're sort of the go-to source.
No.
So,
okay, that's going to do it for part 3 of this month's Q&A series, part 1 of the Patreon monthly live stream.
you're confusing the people with all these part 1s, part 3s.
I'm so confused. Anyway, we have an equal distribution of Radeon and GeForce boxes.
Yeah, passes the test, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think everything's in order. Everything's up to code around here. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that part 3 of this month's Q&A.
Yep.
We're not even going to try and guess what month this month is.
Nope.
But I think we made it on time. Anyway, I'm your host, Steve.
I'm your host, Tim.
We'll see you again next time.